A long time ago, in a remote and frozen part of the world, a group of scientists made their way through a thick forest covered in snow. The air was cold and sharp, and every breath felt heavy. They had traveled far from their homes, leaving behind comfort and warmth, to explore a place that few people had ever seen. In front of them stood a dark cave hidden in the side of a rocky mountain. It looked quiet, almost forgotten, as if it had been waiting for thousands of years. The scientists were not looking for gold or treasure. They were searching for something much more valuable, the story of human history. They wanted to understand who we are, where we came from, and how humans lived long before cities, machines, and modern life existed. Among them was a young scientist named Daniel. He was curious, patient, and always full of questions. While others focused on big discoveries, Daniel believed that even the smallest object could hold an important secret. The team entered the cave slowly. Inside, it was dark and cold. Water dropped from the ceiling, and the ground was uneven. They turned on their lights and began their careful work. Every step mattered, and every piece of dirt they moved could reveal something important. Day after day, they dug into the ground. They found small stones, broken tools, and animal bones. These were useful, but not unusual. Scientists had seen similar things before. Still, they continued, knowing that discovery often comes after long periods of patience. One afternoon, when most of the team was busy in another part of the cave, Daniel was working alone. He carefully brushed away dirt from a small area near the wall. As he worked, something caught his eye. It was a tiny object, partly hidden in the soil. At first, it did not look special. It was just a small piece of bone, no bigger than his finger. Many people might have ignored it, thinking it was just another animal bone. But Daniel felt something different. He could not explain it, but something inside him said this bone was important. He picked it up gently and cleaned it with a soft brush. The shape was unusual. It looked like part of a human finger, but something about it seemed different. Daniel stood up and called the others. "Come here," he said, trying to stay calm but unable to hide his excitement. The team gathered around him. They looked at the small bone carefully. At first, no one said anything. Then one of the older scientists spoke. "It could be human," she said, "but we need to be sure." They placed the bone in a special container to protect it. Even though it was small, they treated it with great care. In science, even the smallest mistake can destroy important evidence. That evening, the team sat together and talked about the discovery. Some believed it was just a normal human bone. Others thought it might belong to a Neanderthal, an ancient type of human that lived thousands of years ago. But Daniel felt there was more to the story. "I don't think it's the same as anything we've seen before," he said quietly. The next step was to send the bone to a laboratory. There, experts could study it using advanced technology. The most important test would be DNA analysis. DNA is like a hidden code inside every living thing. It carries information about who we are and where we come from. The bone was carefully packed and sent away. Then came the hardest part, waiting. Days turned into weeks. The scientists continued their work in the cave, but their thoughts often returned to the small bone. What would the test show? Would it be something ordinary, or something that could change history? Finally, the results arrived. The team gathered together as the lead researcher opened the report. The room was silent. Everyone could feel the tension. "The bone is about 40,000 years old," the researcher began. This was already exciting. It meant the bone came from a time when early humans were still learning to survive in a harsh world. But the next part of the report was even more surprising. The DNA does not match modern humans, the researcher continued. It also does not match Neanderthals. The room filled with confusion and excitement. "What does that mean?" someone asked. The researcher looked up, his eyes wide with amazement. "It means this bone belongs to a type of human we have never seen before." For a moment, no one spoke. The idea was hard to understand. A completely unknown group of humans. How was that possible? Daniel felt his heart beating faster. He remembered the moment he found the bone, the feeling that it was special. Now, that feeling had become reality. The scientists began to ask questions. Who were these people? How did they live? Why had no one discovered them before? Because the bone was found in a cave called Denisova Cave, the scientists gave this new group a name, the Denisovans. This small piece of bone, which once seemed so unimportant, had opened a door to a new chapter in human history. The discovery changed the way scientists thought about the past. Before this, they believed there were only a few types of ancient humans. Now, they knew the story was much more complex. Daniel stood quietly, holding a copy of the report. He thought about how easy it would have been to miss the bone. If he had not been careful, if he had not paid attention, this discovery might have stayed hidden forever. He realized something important in that moment. Great discoveries do not always come from big or obvious things. Sometimes, they come from small, quiet moments, when someone chooses to look closely and believe that even the smallest object can tell a powerful story. As the team prepared to share their discovery with the world, Daniel felt proud, but also humbled. The cave still held many secrets, and this was only the beginning. Somewhere in the darkness, more pieces of history were waiting. And now, they knew that even the smallest bone could change everything. After the discovery of the small bone in the cave, the world of science began to change in ways no one expected. What once seemed like a simple find had now become one of the most important discoveries about human history. Scientists from different countries started to pay close attention. They wanted to understand more about these mysterious people called Denisovans. At first, there were more questions than answers. Who were the Denisovans? How did they live? Why had no one found them before? The only clue was a tiny piece of bone and the DNA hidden inside it. But sometimes, even a small clue can lead to big discoveries. Scientists began to study the DNA very carefully. DNA is like a map of life. It tells a story that goes back thousands of years. By reading this map, scientists can learn about ancient people, their bodies, and even how they survived. As researchers worked day and night, they made an exciting discovery. They found that Denisovans were not completely separate from modern humans. In fact, they had met each other a very long time ago. This was surprising. For many years, scientists believed that modern humans traveled across the world and replaced all other types of humans. But now, the evidence showed something different. It showed that humans did not just replace others, they connected with them. In ancient times, when modern humans moved into new lands, they met different groups like Neanderthals and Denisovans. Sometimes they lived near each other. Sometimes they shared knowledge. And sometimes, they even had families together. This meant that a part of Denisovan life still exists. Today, scientists began testing the DNA of people living in different parts of the world. They wanted to see if any trace of Denisovans could still be found. The results were incredible. Some people, especially in parts of Asia and nearby regions, had small pieces of Denisovan DNA in their bodies. This meant their ancestors had met Denisovans thousands of years ago. It was like a hidden connection between the past and the present. But the discoveries did not stop there. As scientists continued their research, they learned something even more important. The Denisovans were not just part of history, they had actually helped modern humans survive. In some parts of the world, especially in very high mountains, the air has less oxygen. For most people, it is difficult to breathe in such places. It can make them feel weak and tired. But some communities have lived in these mountains for generations. They can breathe more easily, even in thin air. Scientists wanted to understand why. When they studied their DNA, they found the answer. These people had a special gene that came from Denisovans. This gene helped their bodies use oxygen more efficiently. It allowed them to live and work in places where others might struggle. This was an amazing discovery. It showed that Denisovans had passed on something valuable to modern humans, a natural ability that helped them survive in difficult environments. All of this knowledge came from one small bone. A bone that could easily have been ignored. A bone that lay hidden in the ground for 40,000 years. Back in the cave, Daniel often thought about what had happened. He remembered the cold air, the quiet darkness, and the moment he first saw the bone. At that time, he did not know it would change history. He only knew that something about it felt important. Now, everything was different. The discovery had not only changed science, but also the way people thought about themselves. Humans were not alone in their story. They were part of a larger family, connected to other ancient groups in ways no one had fully understood before. Daniel realized that history is not always simple. It is not just one straight line. It is full of connections, meetings, and shared lives. The past was more alive than people had imagined. Scientists continued to explore the cave and other places around the world. They hoped to find more evidence of Denisovans. Every new discovery added another piece to the puzzle. But even as new information came, the first bone remained special. It was the beginning of everything. Daniel also began to think about the future. If one small discovery could change so much, what else was waiting to be found? How many secrets were still hidden beneath the ground, in caves, mountains, and forests? He understood that science is not just about big machines or complex ideas. It is also about patience, curiosity, and the courage to believe in small things. Sometimes, the world changes not because of something large and obvious, but because someone notices something small and asks a simple question. What is this? That question had led to a discovery that connected the past and the present. It showed that humans are not just individuals living today, but part of a long and shared journey. As Daniel looked back on everything, he felt a quiet sense of wonder. The world was full of stories, hidden in places people often ignore. And all it takes is one moment, one discovery, to bring those stories to life. The cave was still there, silent and dark, holding more secrets. But now, people knew that it was not empty. It was full of history, waiting patiently. And somewhere, deep in the earth, there may still be another small piece of bone, ready to change everything once again.